Okay, so this is my first video for the Kinect SDK beta. Now, what this does is this just basically illustrates some very basic gesture tracking. Now, over here, you can actually see I have a little box right here, and that would actually control a slider over here. This, if you hold it for 3 seconds, the checkbox over here should be checked. And this right here would actually change depending on how many seconds you've actually held it for. So if you haven't held it, it would say hold for 3. If you've held it for 1 second, hold for 2, and etc. Now, let's actually see this in action. I should just move the angle just a bit higher. Kinect should automatically track my body, and if I move my hand over here, you'll see that the slider actually does move. This works with both hands. And over here, if I were to hold my hand right in the box for 3 seconds, you'll see that the checkbox actually does check. And again, this works with both hands. That's basically it. Now let's just take a quick look at the code. Over here, we start NUI as a new runtime from kinect.nui.runtime. We initialize it to use depth and skeletal tracking and error handle any exception. Over here, we register for an event, which Kinect actually takes a picture 30 times every second, or once a second, and we'll send that back to the program itself. Now, once that happens, you'll see that this is the depth frame ready. That will send the event to depth frame ready. Now, we make image 1, which you can see up here, as a bitmap source from whatever the image that was sent from Kinect. And over here, we have a skeleton frame ready. Also set up an event for skeleton frame ready. Now, over here, we use transform smooth parameters, which comes with Kinect. And all that does is that reduces the jitter and reduces, actually can correct and can smooth all the movements. I personally don't like to use them because it makes it feel really floaty, but some people might. Now, once we go into the skeleton frame ready, we get skeleton 1 using a quick link query, and we move an object. Now, what that object is over here you can see we have an ellipse for head, body, left hand and right hand. And that moves the object itself. The label, which you can see on here, is set at 0 before runtime. And the joint itself. Again, move body, move left hand, and hand right. That's just the basic. All it does is it scales it, which this is actually an extension from the Coding for Fun library. It just moves it to the scaled position, X and Y axes, and moves the label to the X and Y axes. And it changes the label to say X is now equal to whatever the X position is, and Y is now equal to whatever the Y position is, as you could see during the video. Now, once that's done, it will check for handover. Now, going to handover, it will also scale it over here. You don't actually need to use a scale, but I use a scale because I have actually barely any room, so I have to scale it so that it actually works, and I don't have to like reach for the sky just to hit the slider. Over here we check position of the right hand to see if it's within 250 and 500 on the x-axis, and between 5 and 80 on the y-axis. Like if I go to the definition over here, it will just check the position between y1, x1, x2, y1, and y2, and return true or false depending on whichever it is. Now, if that is true, it will quickly check if the position now is greater on the x-axis than it was the last hand, which is just set over here from each frame, then it would actually move the slider up. Otherwise, if it's less than, it will move the slider down. Same with the left hand. What this does over here is, all it does is just record the last position, just to see if there has been any change whatsoever. Over here we also check the right hand and left hand, and let's actually skip that first part. If nothing is being, if you're not actually holding it, which this is just a Boolean variable, if it's not actually set to holding yet, it will set holding to true and set the time now, the time for datetime.now. Now, once 3 seconds have passed, datetime.now subtract the actual the time before to now. If that's past 3 seconds and you were actually holding it, it would set the box to true or false depending on what it is. Then it will set holding to false and the content for the label over here to holding for 0 seconds because you've already just clicked it. Otherwise, if the 3 seconds aren't actually up yet and you actually are holding it, it will set the content for the label to holding for, and then 3 minus whatever seconds there is. Let's say you've been holding it for 2 seconds. It will say hold for 1 second. Now over here, just quickly error handles it, see if it's still technically holding, because holding just triggers once your hand is within this position. If it's holding and your hand is now out of that position, it will set holding to false, and it will set the content back to holding for 3, as you can see here. Now, over here, we have what's over here, which just sets the elevation and the angle. Now, what this does over here is, once this button over here is clicked, if it's currently the same angle, which means the slider has not been moved, it will not actually change the elevation angle. And this is because Kinect, the motor for Kinect should not be used more than 15 times every 2 minutes, which means not more than 7 times every minute. So just in case somebody likes pressing buttons and clicks it like 400 times while it's the same angle, it would not actually trigger. Now, this just calls NUI or NUI camera.elevation angle and sets that to whatever the slider value is. So currently it's set at 0. If I were to click it right now, it would set it back to 0. And whatever you change it to. Now these over here, all that does is that just changes the text. As you can see here, label 2. Label 2 is current label over here, angle equals 0, which is default. And when it moves, it will just set that to whatever it is and .toString. And same with the next slider over here. When you change the value, it will just change the value for you. Slide value equals n.toString. And once that's all done, NUI.uninitialize, just to make sure that it actually does uninitialize, and because Kinect actually does keep a record, the Microsoft Visual Studio actually keeps a record for some reason of the last values, and you're supposed to uninitialize it. Not really sure why. I think that's just a bug in the beta, but that's really it.